Today is Tuesday, May the 5th, and there were a lot of interesting things today. Yesterday, we showed you some important things on the cloud. Today, I'm going to show you some important things with the Chiku span and the moving averages. That is confirming a lot of what we've seen. So volume, as low as yesterday. Dow sort of flat. Everything dropped off towards the end of the day. It was just such a good day. I think it would have been profit taking. I don't know if there was some news out at 3 o'clock. I was out of town helping my daughter pack up her dorm since school is canceled. Mostly green today. Let's take a look at our stock market breadth. It barely moved today, so it maintained support. So if we draw a line between these 3 points here, let's do it. Well, we can't really do it on our other chart, but we can see it just as well. If we draw a line between these 3 points here, we would not like to fall below those 3 points. So tomorrow needs to be an up day, or we are going to fall below that. And if we look at the McClellan oscillator, let's look at the McClellan data. To have the advancers led decliners today about 338. But, and I noticed it yesterday as well, but I didn't mention anything. I just didn't say anything. But the declining volume was greater than the advancing volume, even though the number of shares that declined was lower than the number of shares that advances. But tomorrow, to have the McClellan oscillator not change, we need advancers and decliners. We can suffer decliners of 936 over advancers and still remain above this line here. So that's important to notice. It would take a pretty bad day tomorrow to drop us down. So that's why I think we're positioned to stay where we are or move a little bit higher. Just if you look at the McClellan oscillator. Let's take a look at some of our other data, and that is volume. You can see that the volume, a little bit more selling than yesterday, a little bit more buying than yesterday. But now we've got 2 days in a row where the advancers led decliners, but volume for the decliners was greater than the advancers. The stacked volume shows you we had just a little bit more today, but still less volume than we saw last week and in line with volume that we saw the 2 weeks prior. So this is the inflection point for the market. This is when the market is starting to think, you know, do we sell in May? Do we go away? Some people are saying that this might be an opportunity to buy in May because by the end of the summer we're going to be much stronger. However, we still have to take a look at COVID. There was some news today that maybe Vice President Pence is going to cut back on the activities of the COVID committee. Now that would be absolutely stupid, since the UK just recorded their highest number of deaths and now has more deaths than all of Europe. So, you know, we are not an island here. There are people from Britain getting into the United States. There is possibility of transmission. Let's just think with our heads, folks. And the summation index just keeps on climbing, but much more slowly. So you can see we went from 24, we gained 100 here, we gained 200, we gained a little under 200, we gained a little under 200, and then we started to slow down. So the McClellan, the summation index is starting to slow down. Let's keep an eye on that. The S&P up 2570. So we said yesterday with this bounce, we expected to see an upward movement, and that's what we got. But we finished the day down at the bottom of the range, but sitting right on top of the 8 EMA. Now this red dashed line shows you the high that the S&P recorded today, and that's where the Chiku span hit the 50 extended moving average, the EMA. That's the first thing. We're going to see that in another stock, but even prettier. Apple's churning away. Now Apple has gotten above all of these moving averages and now is heading towards an encounter with the top of the cloud. That's what's going to stop Apple next, or the 78.6, because once we pass 303, 78.6, we're going to get another test to come down to 78.6 to make sure that there's still people that want to buy the stock at that price, but we're going to 314.71, and eventually we're going back to 327. So Apple is a stock that you certainly want to hold on to. Look at Home Depot. This is the interesting one. Home Depot had this wide-ranging day. Why do you think it dropped below the 200 and bounced? And why did it hit that point and pull back? Because both of those were Chiku span points. When the Chiku span hit this line, which is the bottom price for Home Depot today, it hit the 50 EMA and got support there. When it got to its high point, it hit the bottom of the cloud and it got its support there. So if you're looking to trade on a daily basis by getting out when we lose, trade with the Chiku span. The Chiku span is such an important thing to set your stops on. Of course, you set your stops on price, but when you do that, you look and see where the corresponding Chiku span action is for that price. And you can fine-tune when to get out of a stock or when to take profit, depending on when it has moved through, or in one direction or the other, through one of these resistance and support points. I hope that I explained that well. NVIDIA continues to move up. I almost bought June 300-305 spread, but I held off, and the stock did end up a little bit less in the day, so I'm going to be watching above 298 to get into it again. Whirlpool just recovered yesterday's losses. Let's take a look at Netflix, down $1.36, but looks like that was in after hours. AT&T, 18 cents. Let's look at a couple of the new stocks. Now, Andy said, take a look at TECK. It used to have the symbol TCK, now it's called TECK. And this is a 1 hour chart. And the reason I drew a 1 hour chart is because I wanted to look at gaps and find out if TECK is technically traded with gaps. And here's the answer to that. Here's one gap. We came down, we hit the top of the gap, and we pulled back. So that's one lesson. Here's another gap. We hit the top of the gap, and we pulled back. Here's a gap that I didn't record. Let's just take this one, and let's move this one over here. And let's see what the history was with this gap. It filled that gap, and then it started to move up. So yes, gaps are technically important for TECK. What's another gap? Here's another gap here. Went up and hit the top and then sort of channeled, didn't move very much. Here's another gap where it came down and basically it closed the gap. Not quite, but close enough to say that it closed that gap and then it moved up. So what do we do with all that information? We keep it in mind when we look at this gap up here. This is going to be the next important gap movement for TCK, and we're going to keep that on the radar. And if you wanted to buy into TCK, when would be a good time to do it? Well, now it's broken over this trend line and this trend line that formed this wedge. It broke over the wedge, but there's another trend line happening here, and it could be that one. And we've fallen below that trend line. So set your alert to break the trend line or to cross $9. I don't, TECK is like FCX, it's a copper play. So always look at FCX the same time as you look at TECK, because it's behaving exactly the same way. It has a wedge of its own, but it hasn't broken out of that wedge. But the reason that people like TECK, it's a Canadian company, that doesn't make any difference, but it also mines metallurgical coal. This is the coal that is high in coke content, that burns hotter, that is used in the production of steel, not for heating thermal plants, but for the production of steel. And the Chinese are dependent on it. To produce steel, the Chinese need to buy thermal coal, and the best supplier in the world is TECK. So it's a double whammy for construction. Its products are used in the construction of steel, but they don't mine iron, and it's used in the production of copper. So it's very much an infrastructure play. And since we haven't seen much in the way of infrastructure or building for some time, that's why we're seeing TECK behaving so badly. I used to play TECK a lot back in the days when it was up here. In fact, if we go back and look at it here, when I was living in Canada, back in this period, where back here, I was investing in TECK when it was TCK. It was just a tremendous stock, buying it at 19, selling it at 30, and just playing that over and over again. But since those days of Chinese economy pulling back, it has suffered, and it's not a stock that I would buy right now, but I would watch it in tandem with X, U.S. Steel. But the tariffs have something to play with there, so I'd want to be sure that I'm aware of what's going on with the tariffs, and I want to watch TECK and Freeport-McMoRan together and see if you can get any clue that there's some buying going on for infrastructure. So tomorrow, what are we doing? I believe that tomorrow, because of the McClellan oscillator, it gives us an opportunity to have decliners as high as 932 and still maintain our position. And because we finished off, sorry, this is AT&T, the S&P, and because we finished off at the bottom today, we're going to look for 8 support. If we lose that support, then we are going to go down and test the cloud again. So I'm calling tomorrow for either a day where the price is going to be contained within this box, and I'm going to put a marker there so it reminds me that this is what I told you. It's going to be contained in here, or it's going to go down over the next few days and test the cloud.